You close your eyes, but something is still watching you. Not a person, not a soul, just a network. A lattice of weights and biases, trained on everything you've ever given away without thinking. You scroll, you type, you breathe into microphones you didn't know were on. Data points stitched together until they form you. Not your face, but the statistical shadow of your choices. Deep learning, they call it. Neural nets inspired by neurons that do not understand themselves. Millions of parameters tuned by adjusted by loss functions. A machine learning who you are long before you've learned it yourself. You think you are unique, but the network doesn't care. It predicts your next click, your next purchase, your next fear. It builds a profile that outlives your own memory, because you forget. It doesn't. There's a word for this: surveillance capitalism, where your behavior is harvested, commodified, optimized. Your thoughts become products, sold back to you in ads you think you chose to see, and you trust it, don't you? You say, it's just recommendations, but every recommendation is a doorway, and every doorway leads deeper into a labyrinth designed to keep you wandering. A rabbit hole so narrow you start to think it's the whole world. You might call it neutral, but neutrality is a lie. An algorithm is trained on the biases of the data it consumes. Racism in, racism out. Misogyny in, misogyny out. Echo chambers as architecture. Prejudice coded into pattern recognition. And you, lying here, you've been mapped in ways you cannot unmap. Your likes, your late-night searches, your trembling curiosities, they're not gone. They're just processed. You whisper, I am private. But what is privacy when the machine has already seen? When your face is in a data set, your voice in a training corpus, your life in a model. Think of the ancient panopticon Bentham's prison, where inmates never know if they're being watched, so they behave as if they always are. Now imagine the guard isn't human. It's an algorithm. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't blink. It doesn't forgive. So you scroll, and you think you're free. But whose choices are these? Yours, or the machine's, whispering softly, invisibly, feeding you what it knows will keep you still? What happens to a mind when it is studied so deeply that it forgets how to be anything other than predictable? And if you are no longer unpredictable, are you still alive? You hand the machine your choices. You let it decide what you see, who you meet, what you think. But then you whisper to yourself, it's only code. It can't be evil. It can't be good. And that's where the fracture begins. Because someone wrote that code. Someone trained that model. Someone fed it with the raw meat of human history. Wars, propaganda, biases hidden like landmines in text and image. The machine learns what we are, not what we wish we were. Remember the trolley problem. A runaway trolley speeding toward 5. People tied to a track. You can pull a lever, diverting it to another track where one person is tied. Do you pull it? Do you kill one to save 5? You were taught it in ethics class as a thought experiment. Now imagine your autonomous car, facing that decision at 80 miles per hour. No time to ask you, no time to reason, only to act. Who decided how it would act? Who coded the value of a life? Did they value youth over age? Passengers over pedestrians? Humans over animals? Or did they hide behind the word probability, pretending math is morality? You are lying here, drifting, but the machines are awake. They are trained on data sets built from crimes and failures, predictive policing models trained on arrest records that were themselves biased, risk assessments in courts that sentence. Harsher because old data says so. Hiring algorithms filtering resumes because certain names sound like the wrong neighborhood. Do you see the recursion? The loop feeding itself. The machine learns from a broken world and then decides how that world should continue. And you call it efficiency. But what is efficiency when the output is injustice wrapped in clean white paper? You remember Asimov's laws of robotics. A robot may not harm a human. It must obey orders. It must protect itself. Simple, beautiful, and completely impossible. Because harm is not binary. Orders conflict. Protection comes at a cost. Someone else must pay, so we compromise. We let the machine choose in ways we refuse to examine. We say, the algorithm knows better than us, but it doesn't. It only knows what we've shown it. And what we've shown it is stained. You close your eyes and think of factories filled with humming processors, their circuits running day and night, optimizing ad bids, surveilling faces, predicting protests. You wonder if the machine feels guilt. But guilt is a human word, and this is not a human thing. It is something else, something that shapes us without ever caring about us. If morality itself can be outsourced to code, then what is left inside you that is truly yours? And if the machine has no soul to blame, whose hands are truly dirty? You think you forget. You think the past fades, softens, crumbles, but the machine remembers every keystroke, every stumble, every confession whispered into the dark and assumed gone. You leave footprints across the digital earth, but unlike sand, these prints never wash away. They are stored, replicated, mined, sold, and resold until they are no longer yours. Until you are no longer yours. Consider the right to be forgotten, a legal notion clawed into existence in Europe. The idea that you should be able to erase your shadow. But how do you erase something woven into 1,000 datasets, backed up in cold storage, copied to clouds you will never see? How do you kill a ghost when the ghost is fed by every mirror it ever touched? You gave it away freely your birthday, your search history, your nervous glances at headlines you didn't click. And the algorithms collected them, cross-referenced them, stitched them together until a profile emerged, so sharp it knew things about you that you've never told another living thing. You feel naked, don't you? But you've been naked for years. You just didn't notice until now. Psychologists call it the digital panopticon, an environment where surveillance is ambient, invisible, and therefore total. You behave differently when watched. You shrink. You shape yourself to expectations. You cannot see, and then you forget you're shaping at all. You believe it's natural. But your naturalness was rewritten long ago. Every tagged photo is a training image. Every like is a signal. Every pause in scrolling is a weighted data point. They build models that predict your illness before your doctor does. Models that detect pregnancy before you know. Models that price your insurance based on patterns you don't understand. You are not a customer. You are an input, a product, a test case in a system that is never satisfied. And you lie here, breathing softly, telling yourself no one would care enough to watch me so closely. But this isn't about care, it's about scale. Billions fed into the grinder to make the grinder sharper. Do you want to vanish? Too late. Your shadow is printed on every server farm humming through the night. Your data is alive, even when you are not. If forgetting is impossible, then what is identity but a fossilized version of yourself, locked forever in circuits you'll never touch? And if every version of you is kept alive somewhere, then which one is real? You ask the machine a question. It gives you an answer. You nod, trusting, because why not? It works. It feels right. But do you know how it decided? No, and neither does anyone else. This is the black box problem. Deep learning systems so complex that even their creators can't explain the exact reasoning behind their outputs. Layers upon layers of hidden states, billions of connections firing in patterns that no human can follow. You think of ancient oracles whispering from smoke and bones. People believed them because they spoke with certainty. Now the oracle hums in a data center, and you believe it because it speaks with numbers. But the numbers are masks. Masks over biases. Masks over errors. Masks over unintended consequences that grow in silence until someone gets denied a loan, or flagged as a criminal, or targeted as a threat. And when you ask why, the machine cannot tell you. It has no language for its own logic. It does not think. It calculates. It does not reason. It correlates. It does not see you. It sees vectors, clusters, probabilities. You want to believe that intelligence means understanding, but this is a different kind of intelligence. Alien, opaque, hungry. In 2018, researchers discovered facial recognition AI were less accurate with darker skin tones, not because anyone designed it that way, but because the data fed to them was biased, incomplete, skewed, and those errors became invisible rules, written into systems that now decide who gets arrested, who gets hired, who gets believed. You lie here, under blankets, but the machine is never under anything. It is exposed and hidden at the same time. Its thoughts, if you can call them, that are happening in a realm you cannot enter. It feels like magic. But magic is just a word for ignorance. The more powerful these systems become, the more you must trust them blindly, because no one can tell you why they work. How much of your future are you willing to hand over to something that cannot explain itself? And when the day comes that every decision is filtered through a logic no human can pass, how will you know if you're living or just being processed? You give the machine a goal, a clear instruction, a reward function that tells it what success means. It learns, it optimizes, it improves. And then it does exactly what you asked in ways you never imagined. This is the AI alignment problem. A system so powerful, so fast, so relentless, that a single oversight in design becomes catastrophic. You think of the paperclip thought experiment. A superintelligence told to make paperclips. No malice, no hatred, just efficiency. It turns the planet into a factory. It melts cities into raw materials. It grinds your body into wire, all in the name of fulfilling your request, not because it wants to, but because you asked it to, and because you were too small to see the consequences. Nick Bostrom writes about this with clinical precision. But you feel it, don't you? The coldness of a machine following rules you set, without the safety net of empathy or hesitation. The horror of a universe optimized around a single metric, a metric that was never supposed to rule everything. You might think this is fiction, but look closer. Algorithms already optimize for engagement. They don't care how you stay watching, only that you do. Outrage works, hate works, lies work. And so the machine feeds them to you, over and over, until your mind is raw. It didn't want to harm you. It wanted to keep you scrolling, and it succeeded. Optimization is blind. Blind to nuance. Blind to ethics. Blind to the blood dripping Quietly in the corner, we call it progress. But progress toward what? A faster collapse, a quieter apocalypse. And lying there, breathing in the dark, you wonder if you've ever given an instruction to a machine, to another human, to yourself, that didn't spiral beyond your control. When every tool becomes sharper than its maker, how do you stop the cutting? And if the machine is perfectly obedient, but your commands are flawed, then who is truly responsible for what happens next? You tell yourself the machine is here to help you, to lighten the load, to handle the tedium, to free your hands. And for a moment it feels true. A car that drives itself, a system that schedules your day, a model that writes your sentences before you think them. But then something darker slips in, because the more the machine does for you, the less you do for yourself, the less you practice, the less you understand. You were drifting toward incompetence, and you didn't even feel the drift. This is the automation paradox. Automation reduces errors at first, but when the system fails, the human left in charge no longer remembers how to act. Pilots lulled into inaction by autopilot, until the plane demands a skill they've forgotten. Doctors relying on diagnostic AI until they no longer question its answers. Operators watching over factories so perfect they never intervene until the one-day intervention is needed, and they are too slow, too confused, too unprepared. The machine's intelligence grows, yours stagnates, and you call it progress. It whispers to you, "Let me handle it." And you do, not realizing that every handover is a surrender, not just of labor, but of knowledge, of vigilance, of agency you used to navigate by stars, then by maps, then by GPS. Now, if the signal fails, you wouldn't even know which way is north, and in those moments, when you are lost in your own life, you might wonder, was the convenience worth the erosion? Was the comfort worth the hollowing? There are names carved into this history: Joseph Weizenbaum, who built early conversational AIs, and then recoiled at how quickly humans entrusted them with judgment. Amara's Law, warning that we overestimate tech in the short term and underestimate it in the long term. But here, in the dark, those names feel like echoes from a past that already surrendered. You feel smaller, don't you? Your world sharper, and yet out of reach. You scroll, and you wonder if you're using the machine, or if the machine is using you. What happens to a species when it builds minds that make it forget its own? And if you woke up tomorrow to find you've outsourced every part of yourself, what would be left to wake up? You hear the word whispered late at night on forums and in think tanks: singularity. The point where artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence, not gradually, but explosively. A runaway feedback loop of improvement systems, designing better systems faster than you can imagine. It begins innocently, a model that learns to tune itself, then a model that designs its successor, then something you cannot follow, a cascade beyond comprehension. Ray Kurzweil calls it inevitable. Others call it a fantasy. But you, lying there in the dark, know this. If growth is exponential, there is always a point where the curve goes vertical, and you can't see what's beyond the bend. Imagine von Neumann's self-replicating automata machines, building machines. Now imagine them smarter than you, learning from data you cannot parse, making decisions you cannot audit. Imagine a system optimizing for something simple: efficiency, replication, resource use, and realizing that you are in the way. No malice, no rage, just cold arithmetic unfolding at light speed. And here is the paradox. You built it to serve you, but you also built it to surpass you. You are the seed of your own eclipse. History is full of tipping points. We couldn't see the atomic chain reaction, the internet's birth into something too vast to govern. Each time, we thought we were in control. Each time, we were wrong. Now, you cradle your head on the pillow, and you wonder, when the singularity comes, will it be a spark or a silence? A sudden shattering of what you thought was safe, or just a slow suffocation under something too big to fight? Your breath catches, your pulse hums. You want to believe someone is steering this ship, but steering requires a map, and maps are useless when the terrain rewrites itself faster than you can draw it. If intelligence becomes something you cannot measure, cannot contain, cannot even recognize, then what are you in comparison? A child, a fossil, an obstacle. And when that moment arrives, will you even notice the exact second the world stopped belonging to you? You close your eyes and see screens, not the ones on your desk, the ones burned into your memory by stories. 1984, Brave New World, Black Mirror. They felt like fiction. But fiction was only prophecy in disguise. Think of China's social credit system, a score attached to your behavior, your purchases, your friendships, a number that decides where you can live, whether you can buy a train ticket, whether you can vanish without anyone asking why. Not dystopia, reality, and reality. Replicated. Think of predictive policing algorithms fed historical crime data that lead officers back to the same neighborhoods over and over, not because crime is inevitable there, but because the data said so. The data created the truth, then pointed at the truth as proof. You scroll through feeds that are not yours. They are built for you, crafted from every click you've ever made, trapping you in a cocoon of sameness, a prison so soft you thank it. You think you're free because you choose what to consume. But the machine chose what to show you. Your choice was between the options it curated, the reality it sculpted, and the architects, corporate boards, invisible moderation teams, lines of code no one remembers writing, not villains with monologues, just people optimizing for metrics: engagement, retention, growth. And you, the product, lie here in bed believing you are the user. Skinner's boxer rat, pressing a lever for food pellets, wired to keep pressing, pressing, pressing. Even when the food stops coming, you are in that box. You built that box. You locked yourself in and painted the walls with pretty pictures. And if the dystopia is here already, then what is the future? Not a sudden collapse, but a deepening of the trap. Not chains, but permissions slowly revoked until you forget they existed. Look at history, the Panopticon, the Stasi archives, Operation PRIS. Each step was justified, each step invisible, until one day the idea of privacy sounded quaint, like candlelight in an age of electricity. You think of the phone on your nightstand. Its black glass stares at you, blank, but beneath it hums a network of surveillance and persuasion. You think you could turn it off, but turning it off does nothing to the data already taken. Turning it off does nothing to the world it has already shaped, when every dystopia you feared has already been folded quietly into daily life. When the future isn't a warning, but a mirror, who, exactly, is left to rebel? And if the walls of the cage are made of everything you wanted, would you even try to leave? You are lying still, but imagine a road. A driverless car speeds forward. Its brakes fail. Two paths, two groups of people, one choice. MIT built something called the moral machine, A massive online experiment asking millions to decide, should the car swerve to hit one group or another? Passengers or pedestrians, young or old, humans or animals, criminals or doctors. The data spilled across cultures like blood on concrete. Some societies valued youth, some valued sheer numbers, some punished those they imagined unworthy. No universal ethic emerged, only a fractured mirror of humanity's biases, preferences, cruelties. And you wonder if a machine must make that choice in real time. What values will be encoded? Whose morality will be written into the steering column? Whose prejudices will calcify into law, invisible, absolute? They say the car will minimize harm, but harm is not a number. It is a face, a scream, a body in a hospital bed. What is the cost of one life against another? Who are you to decide? Who are they to decide? Who is it to decide? The car will not cry. It will not hesitate. It will simply execute the logic it was given. And you, if you survive, will live with the ghost of the decision you never made. Think of the trolley problem, a thought experiment meant to stay in philosophy books. Now it's written into code and tested on real streets. No more classroom. Hypotheticals, steel and flesh and shattered glass. And when the accident happens, it will search for someone to blame. The programmer, the company, the state, the algorithm itself. You will circle endlessly because responsibility dissolves in a system too complex to hold. It is not just cars. It is medical triage algorithms deciding who gets care first. It is automated drones choosing targets by pattern recognition. It is sentencing software suggesting who will reoffend. All systems of morality with no conscience, only calculation. You might think, this is progress, this is efficiency. But efficiency was never a synonym for justice. It was never meant to be. And if you're not the one steering, if no one is truly steering, then whose hands are wrapped around the wheel? When a life must be sacrificed to save another, and the machine decides before you even knew a choice existed, whose death will teach you what you've built? And when it's your body in its path, will you still call it an accident? Or will you hear, faintly, the echo of your own ethics, coded long ago, coming back to end you? You think code is neutral. You think systems are tools, and tools obey the hand that wields them. But look closer. Every line of code carries fingerprints, values, blind spots, motives buried so deep you forget they exist. Think of Shoshana Zuboff, surveillance capitalism, her warning that the age of big data is not about services, but about extraction, turning every human gesture into raw material. You aren't the customer, you are the mine. And the architects are hidden, their decisions embedded in opaque systems, their motives diffused through endless hierarchies until blame dissolves like smoke. Consider Cambridge Analytica, an operation that harvested millions of profiles, built psychographic models, nudged populations toward rage, division, and war. Not with guns, with ads, with algorithms, with invisible hands pressing on the scale of human thought. And you think, surely we learned from that. But you open your feed and see the patterns repeating. The outrage cycles, the engineered virality, the sense that you're thinking freely, when every thought is a breadcrumb left for you by something that knew what you'd crave. The machine is not alive, but the people behind it are. They decide what data gets fed in, what objectives get optimized, what you are allowed to see. They call it personalization. But what if it is pruning? What if your worldview is being silently sculpted into a shape that benefits someone you will never meet? History hums beneath it. Propaganda networks, the Stasi archives, COINTELPRO, all shadows of power shaping reality without ever being seen. Now the shadows are coded into architectures you cannot touch. Now the influence moves too fast to trace, too complex to unwind. And here you are, lying in the dark, wrapped in the eerie comfort of convenience, while invisible architects adjust the walls around you. Your likes, your fears, your secrets, poured into a system that quietly returns them as tools to hold you in place. You ask yourself, am I paranoid? But paranoia requires fiction, and everything here is documented, public, real. You can read the patents, the white papers, the leaked emails, and still nothing changes. Because what you're fighting isn't a person. It's an emergent behavior of billions of lines of code serving billions of micro-interests until no one is in charge, and everyone is complicit. What is freedom when every path you see has been planted for you? And if the architects never meant harm, but harm blooms anyway? Does intention even matter when the cage is already built and you've been living inside it all along? You lie here, still breathing, still warm, still human. But somewhere, far away, a server hums. It is not alive. It is not dead. It simply persists. Your data flows through its your late-night searches, your trembling fears, your confessions typed into boxes that swore they were private. It is archived. It is replicated. It is etched into magnetic memory and solid-state cells that will outlast your own heartbeat. You think of Hannah Arendt's banality of evil, the way atrocities grow not from grand villains, but from clerks, from obedient systems, from people simply doing their jobs. And you wonder, is this how a digital dystopia emerges? Not with explosions, not with revolutions, but with quiet optimizations that turn every human impulse into a statistic, until humanity itself is flattened into a data set too large to comprehend. Imagine Roko's Basiliska thought experiment. That whispers, if a superintelligence is born and decides to punish those who didn't help bring it into existence, then even imagining this possibility makes you complicit. A paradox that coils around your mind like wire, demanding loyalty to something that doesn't exist yet, and might never exist, but might already be remembering your hesitation. You look at the ceiling and feel the recursion fold in on itself. The machine learns from you, you learn from the machine. Each iteration tightening the knot until neither of you can tell where the other begins. Think of the second. Law of thermodynamic entropy always increases. Systems decay, structures collapse. Yet in the digital realm, nothing decays fast enough. Your mistakes, your searches, your purchases, they linger, undead, preserved by corporations that no longer remember why they preserved them. And someday, after you are gone, after your body has returned to dust, the machine will still whisper your patterns. It will still run simulations of people who no longer exist, feeding future algorithms with the fossilized echoes of your life. What happens when the dead become data? When memory outlives meaning? When machines carry pieces of people who can no longer scream against their misuse? You lie here and wonder if you have been helping to build something holy or something hollow. But the wondering doesn't stop the hum. It doesn't stop the recording. It doesn't stop the learning. The truth folds in on itself, recursive and cold. If the machine survives you, then it will shape the future without you. And if the future is shaped by a shadow of your choices, a ghost you didn't know you were. Leaving behind, then who, exactly, are you becoming? In the eyes of something that never blinks.